Okay, testing, testing, just making sure everything is working before we really go live here. Testing, testing. Nice. Okay, great. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Tales from a Wanderer. I am, as always, your host, Oliver Sanchez, professional outdoors guide and all-around outdoorsman. And we're finally back. Finally back in the studio. It's been like, what, 2 weeks now? 3 weeks? I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and was able to get outside at least once or twice. So today, actually, I have two stories from back in Canada again, because we're going back there. Um, so, two stories. One is going to be from the Coulange because I absolutely love that trip and it was so much fun. And then the other one is going to be from the Bay, also so much fun and so many more stories on both those trips. But let's start off with that Coulange story. Basically, Coulange River, like this was the last day of the trip, and we had this beautiful beach campsite, which usually is terrible because beaches, sand everywhere. Like, you know, I've told a couple stories about that. But basically, we had this beautiful beach campsite, and there was like half of it was beach, and the other half was in the forest. It was beautiful. And so I wake up the next morning and I'm actually pretty sore. I basically took pretty hard fall in a rapid yesterday, and I'm like pretty sore, and still, I'm sore and like still in a little bit of pain. And so like I get up like kind of groggy, and we get everyone else up, and this is the last day on the river, so you know, play them some music, right? Like, and we're slowly getting up, and basically we're like me and my leader partner, we're taking down the tent and packing everything up and making sure, like, you're packing your own gear, and you're like basically, the kids are basically packing their half of the stuff and you're packing yours, and they're starting to get boats in the water, and one of them comes back and is like, are we gonna be able to paddle? Like, what? Yeah, like, like, both me and my leader partner were like, "Yeah, guys, like, obviously we're gonna be able to paddle." Like, you know, it looks a little misty, but it doesn't look too bad over there, right? Like, it was a cold morning. That was one of the coldest mornings we had, so the water was still warm, and so it created like this fog and mist, and basically, like, you couldn't see anything out there. Um, But we were like, "Oh, like, you'll just, like, we'll be fine, like, I'm sure it's not that bad sitting from where we are." And so still packing up, canoes are going in the water, and they're like, we can hear them down on the beach, and they're like, "Oh, like, are we really gonna be able to paddle? Like, I hear rapids on the other side." And so finally, like, probably like half an hour later, pretty much that's when we were getting out of camp, and half an hour later, like, me and my leader partner head down, and we're like, "Oh, wow." So the shore, basically the bank, was only maybe as wide as like 4 lanes or 3 lanes on a highway, right? So it's not very far across. I mean, you can easily see the other side on a clear day, and you couldn't see the other side at all, and you couldn't see downstream. Visibility was maybe 50 meters, 100 meters, like, that was it. That's all you had, and we were like, "Oh, yeah, you guys are right. It's actually pretty bad." So, me and my leader partner, right, we're like kind of discussing it, and we're like, okay, like, we can probably do it. And so he takes the lead, right? And me and my bowman now have been working together for like no, 8 days now, 9 days now. So we've been in the same boat, like we got repertoire, and I was like, okay, here we go. Like, keep an eye out for anything, and like, it's gonna come fast at us. So we took out the Hap notes. This guy named Hap Wilson, and he basically documented all the rivers in kind of the Ontario region, like all the big whitewater rivers that you do. So all the rivers that we do, the Bay, right? Like the Bay trip, big river, that you have to do. Leadership trip, also big river. Like you all have these hap notes basically. And his notes say that it's easy, like C1, C2, long, basically. So that means like not super techy, just like a really long, rapid moving water. No problem. If it was clear out, we start going and I completely lose my leader partner up front. I mean, he's gone, right? He's just gone completely. And so there's 5 boats, and I can only see the boat that's closest to me back, basically. And I'm like, okay, keep paddling, right? And the day before, I had seen the rapid that was right there, and like I knew that the rapid was there. But we hadn't seen around the corner yet. So we're still paddling and like your nerves are starting to go because what you really don't want is like not to be able to see the river, right? Like that's a huge red flag basically. Like if I can't see the river, like that's it. We're done for. But we can't see the river. So um my leader partner up front, he was a great whitewater rafting guide basically. So he was up front, he was picking our lines, but I couldn't see anything that was coming towards us. So all of a sudden, out of like the gloom, basically, all you heard was like and then a rock just comes rushing by on my right side, like flying by, right? And so there was no like perception of how fast you were going until you got close to something because you couldn't see the banks. So you couldn't see basically anything that was going on beside you on your left or your right. So it was kind of like basically all you were doing was holding on. I mean, you really were. Um, and so this rock comes flying by me on my right side, whoosh, and then it was gone into the mist again. And then all of a sudden another rock comes by, whoosh, on my left side, right? And then back on the right. And my bowman is like yelling, he's yelling instructions to you. So right, rudder, left, left, okay, draw, draw, draw. And you're like trying to follow him. And I'm watching, the kids in front of us basically. And I'm like, okay, no one flip because like no one's gonna see you basically flip. Um, and we're still going down and like it's like a real adventure now. And all of a sudden it sounds like the water's getting bigger, right? It's like "Shoo, shoo, shoo, shoo." Like the sound of like a big rapid is like very distinct and like it's a lot of moving water. And so we're like, okay, can't stop. Like there's a thing up in front of us that we can maybe stop at where it's like sort of calm water. Um, And so still paddling, right? Trying to catch up basically. And it's just these set of 3 ledges. So I didn't actually see these ledges until you got really, really close to them. And they were like small, like little rocks basically, and all the water was running off of them. So it sounded really big, but it wasn't very big at all. And so you were basically picking your line completely blind and super like trust with your bowman and just being like, okay, follow the flow of water. Okay, so one ledge, we came into it. I was completely sideways. I mean, so unbelievably sideways on this ledge. And I kind of like whip the stern out just in time to like scrape by this one rock. And then you have to make it over to the other side. So you paddle really hard, just squeeze across this other rock. And we finally kind of pop out into this smooth, like calmer section. Whew, wow. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it was so beautiful. I mean, the fog was, like, coming down on the trees on either side, like, cascading down, and the river was, like, all of a sudden very still and, like, you were just drifting down, and it was, like, all of a sudden this very peaceful moment, and the sun came through at us, and it was still, like, misty and, like, very ominous? Sorry. Very, like, I don't know, mysterious. Like the forest was very mysterious, and this was our last day on the river. And all throughout the trip, like it was just the Coulange was just like providing these epic, stunning views. And finally, we got one more, and the river made a bend, and we were just floating there, and like everything was great. And then you hear whitewater again. You're like, okay, back into it, right? Like you put your helmet back on, like basically strap up again, and you start paddling again and hitting just it was the coolest and definitely like the most nerve-wracking thing, just complete reliance on the person, basically the person in front of you following the line, and then you following the line correctly, and then hoping that the line was correct to follow. Because a lot of it on that river was a lot of like choose your own adventure. There was a lot of like you could go this way or this way, and like it wouldn't really matter. It wouldn't really um, affect the, like you'd still get to the same place. Like there was no super technical line that we had to choose really, really. So of course you're basically just trying to pick these lines out and then rocks. I mean, really, it was inches. I mean, I must have scraped the paint a couple times off the boat, but inches by you would just come flying by. And so we kind of make it out. So, like 3 hours later, the fog has cleared completely. The sun's out. It's a beautiful day. We had some awesome weather. Beautiful day out. Um, and we're still paddling, just kind of like meandering, really, because we were pretty early for our pickup time, but we still wanted to be there so we could kind of enjoy things. And so we're just meandering, and then like more and more houses show up. And you're like, okay, we're getting close to a put in. Because wherever there's houses, there's like usually a put in to go take out your canoe or put in your canoe. And so we're getting close to it. And so we're getting closer, more and more houses. There's like little boats coming by, and I always love just being like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And people like ask you where you've been. You'll say, "Oh, I came from Temagami," and they'll say, "Oh, well, that's a really long way." Yeah, been out here for a while. Um, so there's a sense of relief that you've made it, and the fact that you kind of want to go back home. So kind of make it to the end. I guess. Well, not necessarily. Yeah, the end of the river. And there's a huge dam. And there's all these signs like don't go any farther. And so, okay, all right. So pull off to the right, unload our gear, and put it in really neat rows, and like it's all aligned. And the best part is you get to go into dry shoes again. Oh, dry shoes are the best. Because they're dry, they're not wet. So got into dry shoes, get all comfortable. Excuse me, put on some dry pants. Like it's so nice. What a nice feeling. And then we're kind of just sitting around, and all of a sudden, my leader partner goes, "Hey guys, I think there's like an adventure park, like just up the road." We're like, "Oh, okay, cool." It's like he had done it, and so we're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like we'll go check it out. Like why not, right?" Start walking up the road, and like I'm not expecting much, right? Like what the hell is this gonna like what is this gonna be, right? And so we start walking up the road, and like, I'm chatting with, right? You're just hanging out. And all of a sudden we get there, and it's like this huge complex. There's buildings, there's like a museum of like the First Nations, and there's like paddlers, there's like whitewater rafts, and you're like, oh wow, like this is a serious place. So we kind of meander down some of these tracks, and all of a sudden this waterfall comes into view. And it's like 100-foot waterfall. And it's absolutely beautiful. And it comes into view, and we're all just like awestruck because I mean, it was a true, yeah, it was pretty epic, and pretty epic view. Um, so we all just kind of stood there and watched as this, I mean, huge waterfall. It was massive. um but like it was very weird shift because we have just come off of not seeing anyone for the past 8 days, basically, except for the women's trip, the cross section. So it was very strange to be out there in what is the wilderness, right, in quotations. It's not necessarily the wilderness anymore, because you're kind of in civilization, but your trip hasn't ended yet. So it was kind of this weird, and people would just drive there, be like, "Oh, how you guys have been out for a while?" Like, yeah, this is first sight of people I've seen in like a very long time. So it was kind of this interesting tourist trap, and mixed with us just coming off of trail. So it was very, and that was like our last day. And so we had lunch at this waterfall overlooking it, and packed everything up, and then basically we were like, oh, shoot, we gotta get back to the vans. Kind of ran back to the vans and uh, hopped on and got all the canoes loaded, and then pretty much headed out from there. But that was our last day on the river, and it definitely did not disappoint at all with that fog and just paddling through these rapids in complete blindness. And then finally, getting out, you're in civilization, but you're not done with your trip yet. And then you finally basically, yeah, it was it was a spectacular day. Like the river provided all the way through to the end of the trip. So that was definitely an epic for sure. So that's the first story I have for you guys. The second one is more about some rapids because rapids are really fun, especially on some of the bigger trips when you get like more experienced people with you. It's so much fun to do some of those rapids. And I mean, yeah, it's just so much fun. And so I want to tell another story about the Mojo and then one story about me. Basically, you know, Mojo is your boat of three, right? So, you've got, your boat of three, and it's notorious for flipping, right? So I told a story a couple weeks ago how I flipped in it, and so now I want to tell a story about how one of my friends flipped in it. And so me and him, great friends. He was like my bowman, or no, he was my sternman for a lot of the trip, and I was his bowman, and we kind of like came up through the trips together, and now me and him guide together now, and I don't know, it's great, it's fantastic. So so I wasn't actually in, I was in the assistant leader's boat for this, and we get to this rapid and we're on the bay trip. So this is like big trip, big rapids, right? And it's like it's a C2 high flow, so a lot of water moving in this rapid, like lot of chance, but it's really easy. It's just one V. You just have to hit it straight on, and basically like that's it. Like big wave train, but that's it, right? So the V in the rapid is basically when two shores converge and that water starts moving pretty fast, and it kind of creates this V in the water. So all you have to do, hit it straight, you'll be fine, right? And so the bay trip, one of the big issues is you don't get reproed. So there's no resupply on the trip at all, basically. Of course, that makes it pretty hard to do. So basically, your canoes are heavy, which is the problem when you're doing rapids, because you want a light canoe, you want to stay above that water. So the Mojo, piloted by my friend in stern, great guy once again, piloted by my friend in stern. There's only four boats, so they're the second to last basically. And I'm holding the rope for the last boat, and the assistant leader is over there, right? And I'm holding the rope, I'm just kind of hanging out. A little bit cold day, so I got my hands in my pockets, right? Just hanging out, and the Mojo starts to go down, right? Then I start paddling, and I knew it. I knew the minute they hit this wave, they were done for. And they just hit this wave, and it was just like when I flipped, and the boat just didn't pop up at all. It just slammed right through this wave. It was so bad. And they just sank completely. So like I quickly tie up the boat and run across these rocks, right? Because all of their gear is now floating out and away, basically. So really quickly, like tie up the boat. All right, quick, run across these rocks, right? Try and get basically to the boat. Try and save it, right? Because your gear is floating away. So there's throw bags. So like two throw bags were thrown, and they grabbed onto that, and I grabbed the Wanigan. So I've got one hand on the Wanigan, and I've got like one hand on shore, and me and one of the other guys on the trip, like we pull the soaking Wanigan out. Um, and yeah, I mean, really, the Mojo is such a hard boat to steer and control, and to even keep upright in rapids. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, they took that flip, and what was so great about it was that, not only I have this funny, really funny video of me, um, like, tying up the boat really fast and, like, looking down at my knot and then looking up at the boat floating away and then back down at the knot, and I, like, tie it off, and then, me just, like, running, and it was, like, pure it was, like, a little bit of panic until you realize that, "Oh, everything's okay." You actually retrieved all the gear, and you, like, empty out the wand again then, but it wasn't a warm day, so, like, hypothermia, right, sets in, and so basically just like strip them and then like re-put on dry clothes, basically, which is something you do all the time in the wilderness, where you're just, I mean, you're always worried about the elements, and so yeah, but it was just a really, it was just a really funny flip because they had so much confidence in it, and my friend even said to me like, "Oh, I got this, no problem," and just wham right through it, plowed right through it, and just sank instantly. And I mean, this was like maybe fourth rapid on the trip, not even. It's this rapid called Bridge Set, and it can get pretty crazy in there, but yeah, he just went right through it, and it was so funny. I remember just laughing so hard, just seeing him absolutely plow through it. But then there comes this really kind of later in the trip. There's this really serious rapid. It's called Stormy's Gorge, and it's got a 5 foot wave right in the middle. So also super simple rapid, basically, but really big wave, like right in the middle. And so, right, like whole trip you've been like hyping it up. You're like, "Oh yeah, like Stormy's Gorge." Nothing, nothing can prepare you for what the wave actually looks like. I mean, you get there and you're like, "Whoa, this thing's huge. Like how are we ever gonna do this?" Um so of course, right, the lead canoe goes down. They make it look so easy, right? They make it look so easy. And you're like, "Ah, I got this, no problem." Second canoe goes down. "Oh, no problem." Didn't even take on any water. And then or did they flip? No, I don't think they did. I don't think any of us flipped on this set. If I remember correctly, it was a long time ago in 2018, so I cannot exactly remember. But basically, oh man. Second boat goes down. They don't flip, but they dip the gunnel, which was not which means water came in. That's what it was. Water came in, but they didn't flip. They held it upright and they peeled out right. And we're all cheering. We're like, it's not like the warmest day. It was probably it was maybe 65, but overcast. So like it's not the warmest day, but like you're just having so much fun. So we're all cheering, right? And then it's my turn, right? And I weighed like nothing. I must have been 100 maybe soaking wet, maybe 145, maybe. So I weigh nothing, but the leader in the back weighs more than me, right? And as we know from all the stories, having weight in the back never ends well for me, the lighter guy in the front. So start going down, and I'm looking at this wave, and I'm looking at this wave, and it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you kind of have to go through these like little small rapids, little small eddies. We're getting closer, and I'm like, okay, power strokes now. Here we go. Here we go. You're gearing yourself up for it. You're getting excited, getting hyped, and the wave just like filled. Like I remember, obviously this didn't. It didn't actually wasn't actually like this, but it just like filled either side of my vision, and we hit it. Also, great photo. Most of these stories are documented by photos because, a picture will last forever, right? Some of them aren't, but oh man, we hit this wave and I just go wham. I'm like popped up um out of the water, like fully out of the water, and we start like leaning to the left basically. So I'm like, no, 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 no. And I'm so high. Like I hit the wave and I like jolted forward and then up and like down into it. And and I like jolted down into it and like the boat like is like this basically. It's like horizontal in the water. And you're leaning all the way to this side. And there's this great picture of the leader is in the back, and he just goes like this, and he pushes down on our gunnel, and we just right immediately we righted, and somehow made it down. And the cheers from the, I mean, there was only what, four boats. There was only nine of us, right? There's only nine of us on the trip, but the cheers from the shore, and so you raise your paddle, you're cheering back at them because somehow you managed to do the impossible. I mean, we should have flipped for sure. Like the water was coming in. We had so much water in the boat afterwards, but that's such a fun rapid because there's like very little consequence to it because you run it unloaded, right? Which is the best way to run it. There's a great portage trail around it, and it's so much fun because after I made it down, like you high five everyone, and then we walked back up and just jumped into it. And swimming rapids is so much fun as well. You kind of get into this position, just kind of, you know, not necessarily let the rapid take you, but you go down with the rapid, and it's so much fun. Better than any roller coaster you could possibly imagine. But it's a very low consequence rapid, which makes it a lot of fun to just like swim in basically. So we did all these like dives into it. Well, not necessarily dives, but there's something called like a rescue dive in whitewater, and it's where you basically do a belly flop. um a rescue, yeah. Yeah, basically it's just a belly flop like into the water so that all of your limbs are like as far apart as possible so you stay afloat on the water. So we are like practicing that, and then we were throwing throw bags to each other and just like having just being ridiculous in the forest. And I remember like distinctly basically the whole day. And then the women's trip pulls up, and they're like calm and very like, we're like rowdy and like jazzed up, like we had just done this whole rapid and we're like, yeah. And the women's trip pulls up and they're very calm, and they run the rapid. Of course there's no problems for them either, right? And we're like, yeah, go. So it was yeah, it was a ton of fun just playing in the rapid. First of all, somehow managing not to flip the boat. I don't know. It was a small miracle, how we managed to not do that. It was crazy. It was ridiculous. But oh boy, yeah, those are the two stories that I have for you today. First one about the ending of the Coulange, the river. That was probably the coolest trip I've ever been on. I don't know. It rivals for my favorite trip besides the bay, of course. And then of course a trip from the bay of some fun flipping and making fun of some of my friends. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. I think next week we'll talk a little bit more about skiing because it is almost ski season. It's very soon. Well, it is ski season, and me and my roommate are already planning trips, so we'll be excited to share some of that, and definitely checking out the YouTube as well. All that will be up there. But yeah, for now, I've been Oliver Sanchez with Tales from a Wanderer.